At 1 a.m., my son knocked on my door, not to visit. Not to say he loved me, but to take my home. I thought he came to check on me, to bring comfort, warmth, maybe kindness. But behind his smile, there was something colder than the rain outside. He had papers. Signatures. Plans, all written with the same hands I once taught to write his name. Funny how betrayal looks neat on paper. That night, I learned that love without respect is just manipulation with better manners. He thought I was old, fragile, easy to control, but he forgot one thing. I built the walls he tried to steal, because the truth never dies. The knock at the door. I was washing a single teacup when the doorbell rang at dusk. The house held its breath, as if the walls expected bad news. I dried my hands on the old apron my husband loved. Through the glass, I saw Andrew smile, white and rehearsed. I knew before I opened, this visit had a script. He brought supermarket flowers, still dripping from the mist. They smelled like nothing, only wet and cold. "Mom," he said, voice soft, eyes scanning the hallway. He hugged me. Without touching, measuring the space. "Thought I'd check on you. You know. See how you're coping." We sat at the kitchen table I had polished that morning. He praised the lemon pie, took one careful bite, and talked, little stories about work, numbers that didn't mean life. Then a pause, like a page turn I didn't consent to. "How are the stairs treating you?" he asked, too casual. I looked at the stairs, 14 steps to the bedrooms. Each one had a memory, not a hazard sign. "I manage," I said, knowing he heard weakness. He nodded, lips pressing into a sympathetic line. "That's what worries me," he answered, tone rehearsed. Outside, the wind pushed leaves against the window. Inside, his briefcase sat by his shoe, breathing secrets. He glanced at it like a stage prop waiting its cue. He had never brought a briefcase to dinner before. Curiosity whispered, experience told me to wait. He asked about my doctor, my pills, my appetite. He counted my years without saying the number. He said safety the way bankers say returns. My tea went cold while his smile stayed warm. The pie shrank, his plan did not. When he asked about the deed, my heart blinked. "The deed?" I said, stirring air in my cup. "You know, paperwork. So we can help if needed." His fingers tapped the table, a metronome of intent. The wind outside agreed, a storm was near. I changed the subject to the lilac bush out back. He let it pass, then came back, gentle as a hook. "Places have waiting lists," he said, "like weather. Good homes, with nurses, friends, activities." He smiled as if reading from a brochure. I stood to collect the plates we weren't using. My knees didn't fail me, his faith in that did. "Let me," he said, but didn't rise. His eyes had moved to the hallway again. "Where do you keep important files, Mom?" I brought fresh tea in a softer voice. "Andrew," I said, "what are you trying to protect? Your mother, or your convenience?" He blinked, the smile cracking at the edges. The wind fell silent to hear his answer. The quiet life. Before that evening, my days were small and kind. I woke with birds and the stubborn alarm clock. I opened the curtains my husband chose in '79. I fed the porch cat that adopted me by accident. I boiled water for tea, a ritual that forgives time. The house is not large, but it is complete. Every dent in the banister is a date on a calendar. The kitchen window frames a sycamore that survived storms. The floor still creaks where he used to dance with me. Our wedding photo hangs slightly crooked by choice. Neighbors wave. Some stop to chat about tomatoes. Grace comes Tuesdays with cinnamon rolls and news. We sit at the table, counting blessings and losses. We talk about knees, roofs, and wayward sons. We laugh anyway, because sorrow is heavy alone. I keep the guest room ready, as if hope visits. Fresh sheets, a quilt stitched with brave little squares, a lamp for reading, a glass for water, a prayer. It smells like lavender and the patience of years. No one has slept there since my husband left. I balance the checkbook with a pencil and calm. Bills are folded like letters that don't require replies. Groceries fit in one reusable bag. And a memory. I mend, I dust, I water, I wait for the mailman. The clock ticks, the house answers with warmth. Some afternoons I sit on the back steps and count, not numbers, birds, breezes, breaths without hurry. I remember Andrew building forts in the living room. He once called this house indestructible and boring. He was right about one and wrong about the other. the quiet life is not a lonely life. It is a life with room for listening. I hear the kettle when it sighs before the boil. I hear the floor when it forgives my weight. I hear my name when the wind crosses the porch. Grief lives here, but it pays rent. It keeps to the spare room most days. On anniversaries, it sleeps in my bed. I make space for it. Then I open windows. Air moves through, taking nothing essential. When Andrew stayed away, I learned new prayers, not for miracles, just for clarity and spine. I asked to be useful, even in small ways. I asked to remember who I was before fear. I asked to grow old, not to grow smaller. So when he came with flowers and a briefcase, the quiet inside me didn't shatter, it sharpened. I set another place at the table, for truth. I poured tea for courage, not for comfort, and I listened, the way the house taught me to. The proposal, he came again 2 days later, this time in a suit. The flowers were gone, replaced by papers and certainty. Mom, he began, that sugar-dipped tone returning, I've been looking at some really good facilities nearby. He said facilities like someone's saying vacation homes. I poured tea again, because tea slows time. He talked about nurses, safety rails, and peace of mind. Each phrase was carefully folded to sound like care, but between the words, I heard the click of ambition. He wasn't worried about my safety, he was hunting security. He showed me glossy brochures, all smiling strangers, women knitting under sunlit windows, men playing cards. Each page smelled faintly of new paint and guilt. I nodded politely, my spoon drawing circles in the cup. He mistook silence for surrender. He always did. Grace had warned me, when people speak of care, listen for control hiding behind the kindness. I looked at my son, so sure, so practiced. Once, I'd have believed that confidence meant love. Now, it sounded like an invoice being read aloud. Andrew, I said softly, do you really think I need this? He hesitated, caught between honesty and strategy. You forget things, Mom. You're alone a lot, and, well, this house. It's big. It's old. He paused, eyes flicking toward the deed drawer. I laughed, gently but sharp enough to cut paper. Old things can outlast new greed. I told him. He looked hurt for a moment, or maybe annoyed. He reached for my hand, but only halfway. Please trust me, he said. I'm only thinking of you. He stood, gathering his papers like a magician closing a trick. I'll schedule a visit next week, he added quickly. I didn't answer. I didn't need to. The house seemed to lean toward me protectively. In its silence, I found the strength to play along. When he left, I locked the door before the latch caught. The air in the kitchen shimmered with something fierce. I wasn't angry, not yet, only awake. I realized then. This wasn't about age or safety. It was about possession, and he'd underestimated the owner. Whispers in the neighborhood. The next morning, Grace knocked with 2 coffees. Her face carried the kind of news that never asks to enter. Margaret, she said, I heard Andrew at the pharmacy yesterday. My stomach dropped before she finished. He said you'd be moving to a home soon. The word home felt stolen. Grace sat me down, her hands steady on mine. He also mentioned selling the house, she whispered. The room tilted, the clock ticking louder than ever. For a second, I forgot how to breathe. I tried to laugh, to turn gossip into dust. People misunderstand things, I said weakly. Grace's eyes didn't blink. He's planning something. I looked out the window, the mailbox. The street, suddenly all foreign territory in my own land. By noon, 2 neighbors had stopped by just to check in. Their smiles were syrup, their eyes nosy. Rumors travel faster than truth in small towns. I nodded through their questions, lips trembling politely. They left with sympathy they hadn't earned. When I closed the door, the silence screamed. It wasn't the quiet of peace anymore. It was the kind that follows betrayal into every room. I ran my fingers over the picture frames on the mantel. Each face smiled, frozen in better times. That night, I walked the halls barefoot, candle in hand. The shadows of the furniture stretched like memories. In my husband's study, the smell of tobacco lingered. His old ledger sat on the desk, spine cracked, pages soft. I whispered, I might need your wisdom again. The next morning, the mail brought confirmation. A real estate flyer addressed to Andrew Lewis, owner. The paper trembled in my fingers, though my will did not. I folded it carefully, slid it into the drawer beside my heart. The storm he summoned had just found its eye. Grace returned that afternoon, eyes sharp and kind. "What will you do?" she asked quietly. I smiled without warmth. "I'll do what women like us always do." She frowned. "And what's that?" "We wait until they think we're powerless, and then we remind them." The papers on the table, the morning light spilled through the curtains like mercy unaware. I brewed tea, humming softly, pretending everything was normal. But normal had moved out the night before. Andrew's briefcase visit lingered in the air like smoke. I needed proof, not instinct, before calling him a thief. When I opened the drawer, I found the envelope. Not addressed, not sealed, careless, or confident. Inside, a stack of legal documents bearing my name. At first, the words blurred from shock, then sharpened, a transfer of ownership, my forged signature dancing across. I sat down, my knees suddenly too old for deceit. The room swam as my own handwriting betrayed me. I traced the fake scrawl, letter by letter, and remembered teaching that hand to write. He had my penmanship. And now, my house. For a long time, I just listened to the clock. Each tick said he did this. Each talk said he did this to you. I folded the papers carefully, not tearing, not crying. The anger hadn't arrived yet, only disbelief. There's a numbness older than rage, and quieter. When Grace came by, she saw my face and didn't ask. I handed her the envelope, and she read in silence. Her lips tightened, she set the papers down slowly. "Oh, Margaret," she said, "he's trying to erase you." I smiled, brittle but unbroken. "Then I'll write myself back in." That night I didn't sleep. I watched headlights pass by, each car sounded like a reckoning approaching. I thought about calling him, screaming, demanding why. But mothers know the futility of asking sons who've chosen greed. Instead, I wrote down everything I remembered, times, words, looks. By dawn, the anger finally came. It didn't roar, it hummed, the kind of anger that builds walls, not breaks them. I made oatmeal, fed the porch cat, and opened the curtains. The day would see me standing. That would be enough. The papers sat on the table, waiting for a reckoning. Andrew returned that afternoon, unaware of what I knew. He came smiling, empty-handed this time. "Too light, too bright, Mom," he said, voice coated in sugar. I made some calls. I let him talk, watched the performance unfold. He spoke of doctors, transportation, next steps. Finally, I placed the envelope between us. He blinked, confused at first, or pretending to be. "What's this?" he asked, already knowing. "Something you forgot last time," I said. He glanced down, saw his crime looking back. His smile faltered but didn't fall completely. "Mom, you're misunderstanding. These are drafts." "Drafts don't forge signatures," I replied calmly. He laughed, small and sharp, the sound of cornered arrogance. "You shouldn't have been snooping through my things." I stood slowly, every movement deliberate. "Your things?" I repeated, the air thickening. "This is my home, Andrew. Everything here breathes my name." He sighed, exasperated, as if dealing with a child. "You're not thinking clearly. This house is too much for you. Too much for me, or too tempting for you?" I asked. He looked away, jaw tightening, mask slipping. "You raised me better than this," I said softly. He snapped. "Then maybe you should have saved better too." The cruelty landed clean, practiced, polished. Silence stretched between us, heavy as judgment. He straightened his tie, reclaiming his false composure. "I'll handle things," he said, heading for the door. "No," I whispered, "you already mishandled them." The words followed him out like a curse. When the door closed, the wall sighed with me. Grace arrived minutes later. She didn't need an explanation. I poured tea, hands steady, voice steadier. "He's chosen his path," I said. "Now I'll choose mine." And for the first time, I didn't sound afraid. That night I walked through each room, touching memories. The kitchen, where I taught him to measure sugar. The hallway, where his height marks still lingered in pencil. It hurt to see love etched into betrayal, but I whispered to the dark, "Not yet. Not defeated." The visit from the social worker. 3 days later, a knock came that didn't belong to family. A woman in a gray blazer stood on my porch, polite smile rehearsed. "Mrs. Lewis?" she asked, clipboard already open. She smelled of hand sanitizer and bureaucracy. "I'm here about a wellness check." For a heartbeat, I forgot to breathe. Then I saw Andrew's shadow in her tone, soft, but sharp-edged. "Your son contacted us," she continued, stepping closer. "He's concerned about your memory and safety." Her words fell like pebbles in a well without water. I invited her in. Fear prefers company. She sat on the couch, legs crossed, pen ready. Her eyes roamed the room. The photos. The clean dishes, the order. "How long have you lived here alone?" she asked. "Long enough to know when I'm not," I said, smiling gently. She hesitated, then began her questions. Name, date, president. I answered each one like prayer beads. Her pen slowed, confusion replacing suspicion. Finally, she asked, "Has anyone tried to pressure you recently?" I looked her straight in the eye and said, "Define pressure." When she left, the quiet rushed back in, angry and alert. Grace came over as soon as I called. "He's escalating," she said, voice trembling with fury. I nodded, the calm before a mother's storm. "He wants me declared unfit," I whispered, "but I've never been clearer." That night, I found my husband's will in an old box. His handwriting steadied my hands like it always did. The paper was yellowed, edges soft, ink still loyal. Everything, it said, belonged to me, and only me, a whisper of comfort in a house under siege. I made copies, placed one under the floorboard in my room, another under the tablecloth, beside the salt shaker. A woman learns to hide her proof where men never look. Then I poured a single glass of sherry, lifted it to the ceiling. "To clarity," I said, and drank like it was medicine. The phone rang once before midnight. His voice on the other end was syrup and venom. "Mom, you forced my hand," he said, tired of pretending. I smiled into the darkness. "Good," I replied softly. "Now you'll see what mine can do." The lawyer's file. Morning brought courage with the smell of coffee. I called William, our old lawyer. Gray hair, steady heart. He remembered me instantly, voice warm with time. "Margaret Lewis," he said, "I never forget a fighter." "I think it's time I prove you right," I told him. The law office hadn't changed. Same oak desk, same dust. I handed him the forged papers, my hands steady at last. He read silently, eyes narrowing at each signature. When he looked up, his jaw was tight with anger. "This isn't amateur work," he said. "It's betrayal with a degree." We searched the archives, old boxes marked in fading ink. After an hour, he pulled one labeled Lewis Estate. Inside lay the original deed, the one with my husband's note, "To my wife, my compass. May this house always keep you safe." Tears blurred the ink, but not the meaning. William smiled softly, sliding the document across. "You're still the sole owner," he said, legally untouchable. Relief bloomed slow, fragile as morning light. For the first time in weeks, I inhaled without fear. The walls of the house felt like they'd exhaled too. "Do you want to press charges?" he asked gently. The question hung heavy between guilt and justice. I shook my head. "Not yet," I said. "I want him to think he's winning." He nodded, respect glinting behind pity. "You were always the quiet kind of dangerous," he said. That afternoon, Grace found me at the window. "You look lighter," she said, handing me tea. "Knowledge weighs less than fear," I answered. She smiled. "So what's next?" "Next," I said, "we make him believe the storm has passed." We spent hours drafting letters, notes, and decoys. Andrew would see what I wanted him to see, a frail, tired mother. Behind that illusion, the real work began, every signature, every record now under lock and truth. Even the cat seemed to guard the file cabinet that night. As I turned off the lamp, the house hummed with purpose. I whispered into the dark, "He taught me deceit, I'll teach him consequence." Outside, thunder murmured like applause from heaven. For once, I didn't flinch. Storms, after all, were made for women like me. The quiet plan. For the first time in weeks, I woke before dawn without dread. The house breathed with me, steady, alive, protective. Grace came early, her scarf pulled tight against the cold. She brought pastries, courage, and that knowing look of hers. "It's time, isn't it?" she asked, and I nodded. We sat at the kitchen table with William's letters spread wide, ink and intent, both permanent in the right hands. The plan was simple but poetic, legal, quiet, devastating. I would transfer ownership of the house to a charity, but I'd remain its lifetime tenant, untouched, immovable. Grace smiled when I told her. "That's brilliance with manners. It's justice without noise." I corrected gently. She laughed, pouring coffee with pride disguised as calm. The sunlight caught the steam, turning it gold. I felt my husband's presence in that light. Approval, maybe. When I called William, his voice carried restrained delight. "I'll handle it personally," he said. "No loose ends." I signed the documents slowly, feeling each stroke. It wasn't surrender. It was strategy disguised as fragility. Every loop of my name was a line of defense. For the next few days, I played the role of frail mother. I let Andrew's calls go unanswered, then answered with confusion. "Oh, I forgot," I'd say sweetly. "You handle things so well, dear." He believed me, arrogance being the blindness of his breed. He even offered to drop by to check the mail. Grace helped me stage the illusion. Unpaid bills on the table, pill bottles half empty, a notepad of scribbles. When Andrew came, he saw exactly what he wanted. "Mom," he said softly, "you really can't go on like this." I almost admired his confidence. Almost. He didn't notice the sealed envelope on the counter. He didn't know it was the donation agreement, already filed. He left that night feeling victorious, sure of his genius. I watched him from the window, his car slicing through fog. The cat purred beside me. Even she knew a trap when she saw one. Later, Grace and I drank tea in silence. "You know this could break him," she whispered. "He broke us first," I said, no tremor in my voice. The clock chimed 9 times, firm, deliberate, final. The house had chosen its side, and it wasn't his. The trap. 2 days later, Andrew came with his brightest smile. "Mom." He called, carrying flowers again, cheap apologies in bloom. I met him at the door, shawl draped like armor. "Oh, Andrew, I've missed you," I said, tone sugar and steel. He believed every word. Men like him always do. We sat at the table, tea and tension between us. He spoke of new opportunities, of selling for my comfort. I nodded, eyes wide, playing the perfect fool. Grace had hidden a small recorder beneath the napkins. Every lie he spoke became a confession preserved in plastic. "So," he said at last, leaning forward. "Have you thought about moving?" "Yes," I answered, "I think you're right. It's time to make things easier." Relief washed over his face like sin forgiven. "That's wonderful, Mom. I'll handle everything." "Oh, I know you will," I said softly. He took out his phone, calling someone. A realtor, maybe. I stirred my tea, slow circles of satisfaction. "I'll sign anything you bring," I added sweetly. He froze for a second, surprised by my surrender. Then he smiled, the smile of a man walking into his own grave. After he left, I sat in the quiet and pressed stop on the recorder. Grace came in from the porch, grinning. "Got every word," she said, placing it in her purse. "Insurance," I replied. "And maybe a lesson." We sealed the file like a prayer, one that ends in justice. That night, rain tapped against the window like applause. The deed transfer was complete, registered, untouchable. Andrew's schemes were paper ghosts now, lifeless and loud. I made tea for myself and poured 1 cup for my husband. "Tomorrow," I whispered, "we finish the story." At dawn, the sky cleared, the air sharp with truth. Grace drove me to William's office for the final notarization. The pen felt heavier this time. Or maybe I felt lighter. When it was done, I didn't feel revenge. I felt restoration. The kind that doesn't ask permission. The confrontation, the next day, came dressed like any other. Quiet, deceitful, bright. Birds sang on the fence, oblivious to human wars. I baked a pie, lemon like always, the ritual of calm. Grace sat in the corner pretending to read a magazine. The air hummed, waiting. At 3 p.m., his car appeared in the driveway, silver and smug. Andrew stepped out, suit perfect, confidence ironed sharp. He didn't knock. He walked in like he already owned it. "Mom," he said, smiling, "I brought the final papers." The devil always calls it final. I greeted him with softness, the kind that hides razors. "Oh, sweetheart," I said, "you've worked so hard for me." He placed the documents on the table, his victory ready for ink. "Just sign here," he said, tapping the page. His voice trembled slightly, hunger disguised as love. Grace coughed from behind her magazine, recorder hidden. I leaned forward, pen in hand, but didn't write. Instead, I asked, "Andrew, do you ever pray?" He frowned, impatient. "Mom, please, just sign." I smiled. I did, just not the papers you brought." He blinked, confusion flooding his eyes. "What are you talking about?" he asked. I slid an envelope across the table, thicker, older, official. "The house," I said softly, "now belongs to Charity." His face drained like color from a dying sky. "What?" he whispered, voice cracking. "I'm still allowed to live here." I continued, "But you? You're not even in the story anymore." Grace pressed record louder than necessary. He realized too late that the trap had teeth, his mask shattered. "You stupid old woman," he hissed. I didn't flinch. I'd been called worse by grief itself. "Sit down, Andrew," I said, steady as stone. "You came for bricks and wood. You forgot they were mine." The silence afterward was a requiem. He stormed out, slamming the door so hard the walls quivered. Grace touched my shoulder, trembling with both fear and awe. "Are you all right?" she asked. I exhaled slowly, watching dust settle like peace. "Yes," I said. "The house finally knows who lives here." The public shame. The next morning, the town already knew. News travels faster than forgiveness in small places. Grace's cousin worked at the bank. William had friends at City Hall. By noon, whispers bloomed like weeds in every cafe. He tried to steal from his own mother, they said. I didn't leave the house that day. I didn't need to. Justice was out walking for me. Every car that slowed in front of my gate carried curiosity and pity. I kept the curtains open, unashamed. Let them see what survival looks like at 72. Andrew called that evening. His voice was a stranger's. Brittle, panicked, small. "Mom," he said, "you've ruined me." "No," I answered softly. "You did that." I just turned on the light. The line went dead, leaving only clarity behind. Grace arrived with tea and the day's gossip. "He's been avoiding everyone," she said, eyes wide. "Good," I replied, stirring sugar into calm. "Maybe silence will teach him what love didn't." She squeezed my hand, whispering, "You scare me, in the best way." That night, I dreamed of my husband for the first time in years. He stood by the old fence, smiling like forgiveness itself. "You did what had to be done," he said. "I just wish it hadn't been him." I woke up crying, the kind that heals instead of hurts. The next morning, the newspaper arrived folded neatly, an article on elder fraud, anonymous. But familiar. Grace had written it, her quiet revenge in print. The headline read, "Some houses are stronger than blood." I clipped it, framed it, and hung it by the door. When I stepped outside, neighbors nodded respectfully. Their eyes no longer pitted, they saluted. For the first time, I felt tall again, taller than the roof. The sun touched my hands, warm, forgiving, whole, and somewhere, justice smiled. The silence after the storm left slowly, like someone ashamed of the damage. Days passed without visitors, without calls, without tension. The air in the house softened again, forgiving the noise. Even the clock seemed to tick more kindly. I realized peace isn't loud, it's earned in whispers. Grace came every morning with bread and patience. We talked about little things, birds, knitting, news. She never mentioned his name. She didn't need to. Silence spoke for both of us, an elegy for disappointment. Sometimes love must be buried so dignity can live. One afternoon, I found his childhood drawing in a drawer, a house, stick figures, hearts above it. He had written, "Me and Mommy forever." The paper trembled in my hands but didn't tear. Some promises break themselves quietly. I spent that evening tending the garden he once played in. The earth felt warm, like it still trusted me. I planted lilies where his toy trucks had rusted. Maybe beauty was the only revenge worth keeping. The cat watched, tail flicking approval. Inside, I cleaned the house room by room, not to erase him, but to reclaim myself. Each sweep of the broom felt like a prayer. By dusk, I could see my reflection in the window again. She looked older, wiser, unafraid. Grace brought a newspaper the next morning. Andrew's name wasn't in it, but his shadow was. An article about forgiveness quoted a woman I didn't know. It said, "Justice is a door you open from the inside." I smiled. It sounded like something I'd forgotten I could say. When night fell, I sat by the fire with tea and quiet. The house creaked softly, content like an old friend. I whispered to the empty chair across from me, "I think I've done enough now." And for once, the silence agreed. The justice. A month later, William called with news. The investigation is done, he said. Your son's forgery and false reports. Case closed. No jail time. But he'll never hold a license again. I thanked him, not with joy, but with closure. The court sent a letter confirming the deed's transfer. Black ink, white paper, the language of finality. The house was legally safe, spiritually freer. I ran my hand along the wall and felt gratitude hum beneath paint. It wasn't victory. It was balance restored. Grace and I decided to host tea for the neighbors. The same faces that once whispered now brought cakes and flowers. Nobody mentioned the scandal, but every glance said we know. I laughed more that day than I had in years. Even the clock chimed brighter, as if proud. In the evening, I walked to the fence at sunset. Children played where gossip used to echo. The wind smelled of cinnamon and forgiveness. A boy waved and shouted, "Hi, Miss Margaret." I waved back, heart light as unburdened time. Later, I wrote a letter, not to Andrew, but to myself, to the woman who forgot her worth and remembered in time. It began. I folded it neatly, sealed it with peace instead of wax. Some truths don't need an audience, they just need air. I placed it in the drawer where betrayal used to sleep. That night, Grace raised her cup and said, "To justice." I lifted mine and added, "To gentleness, too." We drank to both, because they belonged together. The fire crackled in agreement, and the house, always listening, exhaled.